So I get around a little bit. I like to plant creation seeds. I was in Virginia a couple of years ago, and they called me the Johnny Appleseed of creation. And so wherever I go, I like to plant creation seeds. And so on the way out here, actually they had me do a revival at in Baraboo, Wisconsin at Crossway Baptist. So they gave me Sunday school, Sunday service, Sunday night, plus Monday night and Tuesday night and Wednesday night. It was so much fun. And so they're going to be pretty equipped to stand up to the evolutionists. And again, from Minnesota, this is typically what they're teaching in our schools. Don't be absurd. Nobody made us. We evolved by chance from snowflakes. It's just absurd. Anybody ever go out? Do you guys get snow here? Is that a thing? Okay. You ever go outside and there's a snowman built? Look what has evolved. No, it's obviously designed. And I've got a lot of videos that you can see on YouTube. And oh yeah, this is my first time in Pennsylvania. So what should I make? Yeah, my very first time. Yeah, it's a lot different where I grew up. Where I grew up it was flat. Every mile there was a road, so it looked like a big checkerboard from the sky. That's not the way here. What should I do before I leave Pennsylvania? We're going to have interaction throughout the seminar. Anybody have any idea? What should I do? Or what's that?
See the horseshoe curve.
See the
horseshoe curve.
See the horseshoe curve. Okay. Is that like a river or something, or?
Railroad.
Okay. All right. Horseshoe curve. Okay. All right. Good.
Eat scrapple for breakfast.
Eat what for breakfast?
Scrapple.
Scrapple.
Yeah. You don't want to ask what's in it.
Do you know how to make? Do you know how to make it?
He will not make scrapple.
He's not going to make scrapple. Okay. All right. We're not making scrapple. What else do you guys like to do for fun here? What's that? Do you guys hunt? Do you guys fish? Do you do stuff like that? Yeah, I get, some people do that. I mean, I just love to share this creation message. But you guys have taken time out of your busy schedule to come to this revival, or this seminar. And yeah, there's the Baraboo. These are some more of the pictures. I've given talks at colleges. Those are always fun. This is a conference down in Nebraska. This is the very first one I did at St. Cloud State, and the Atheist Club was there, and that was a lot of fun. The guy in the checkered shirt, he came up to me and he thanked me and he said, "Thanks for doing this. I was beginning to doubt the Bible because of what I was being taught in class." And I reach out as much as I can, and I make Bible clubs or creation clubs on campus. And it's kind of a heavy lifting, but it's worth it because we have access to the rooms, to the kiosks. But it's kind of hard. You got to meet the students, get the advisor, write the Constitution. But now it's a lot easier just to get a community creation club. You just need a place to show the movies or have a speaker. And I'd love to get a creation club in every community, and then have regional speakers. Pittsburgh should have regional speakers coming in. They really should. And have, so we can go and get the creation knowledge and come back to our communities and share that. And I do whatever I can. I'll do vacation Bible schools. This is my office. It's at St. Cloud State, at the busiest door, the busiest building on campus. And when I was working on these talks, I just go there and I'll have a sign. Where's your faith? Hydrogen and helium turn into people, or God created? And I'll just have the sign, and students come up and ask about it. And a couple of them signed up to be on our college club email. But what I really like about St. Cloud State is being able to put the cross next to their posters so that people have an option. There's a godly option. And right now, this is hanging there right now. It's a poster inviting them out to church. And where's your faith? God created, or nothing exploded? And the students are getting tours of the campus. High school students are getting tours, and they get to see that. And I took a break last fall. I just needed a break, so I coached junior high basketball at the Christian school. And first thing I taught them was the most important, and you can see these talks on my YouTube channel, Basketball Talks, most important minutes in basketball. It's when you put on your shoes. You're down there, you say a prayer. You count your blessings that you can play and you can walk and you can talk. And then when you tie it, you thank Jesus for dying for our sins, for your sins. And then you double knot it because we're sealed up for redemption. I hate untied shoes during basketball. And then the next one, you thank God for the people in your life. And then you tie that one and you ask that He'd help them play in a way that honors God. And I was very, 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 I watched more on how they how they performed under pressure. I didn't want the refs, the opponent, the score, missed shots, anything to affect what they were doing. And they did pretty well. Today we're going to take a look at God's designs. I think you're going to enjoy some of the things that we're going to look at. And the verse for this seminar, for the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. Clearly seen. We're going to look at some of the stuff today. It's clearly seen. It had to be designed. There's no way it came together by chance. Being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. We have no excuse. There's an incredible God, an incredible designer, and we are willingly ignorant, I think, if we cannot see that. And then it goes on to say, because that when they knew God, they glorified Him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And we have a lot of, I see a lot of that on campus. They profess that they're wise, but they are fools. A fool is one who says in his heart, there is no God. So they're very intelligent, but they don't have the fear of the Lord, so they don't even have the beginning of knowledge. And we used to play baseball at the park with my kids when they were growing up, Saturday mornings. And one of the players there went to a private school. And he ended up winning the state championship when he was a junior in baseball. And I got to, he's really a neat guy. And I asked him, do they teach evolution at your school? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what do they teach in Bible class? And he said, well, we have religion class, and in there they teach creation. And so I asked him, well, which one's true? And he said, well, it depends which class I'm in. So he can decide what's true or not is basically what that school taught him. And so we want to know, we want people to realize that, no, God's Word is true. And if it rubs you the wrong way, maybe we should turn around. And if this Word makes you angry, don't get mad at this word. Get mad at the lie that made you comfortable. If this makes you uncomfortable, the Bible makes you uncomfortable, get mad at the lie that made you comfortable. And so, again, the battle is raging, creation versus evolution, and from that, you get all the chaos in the world, God's truth versus Satan's lies. And ground zero, again, is creation versus evolution. And we will give you some of the clues that are just undeniable that God's Word is true. And this one, we went to ICR, Institute for Creation Research in Denver and in Dallas, or close to Dallas. And they got this. We just showed up. I thought they gave tours, and they didn't. But Brian Thomas showed us around. Such a nice guy, and just a great person that took time and showed us around. And this is one of the fossils. That thing's probably this big. It's a fossil squid, and the reason they bought it was because Darwin said it couldn't fossilize. Only the hard pieces get fossilized, according to Darwin. And so they bought this just to prove Darwin was wrong. I mean, you see the jellyfish on a beach, how long are they going to last? They aren't going to last millions of years to get fossilized. Something special had to happen. And we find fossils everywhere around the world, so something happened everywhere around the world. And we find footprints, too. On every continent, it's dinosaur footprints. Footprints aren't going to last millions of years. Something had to happen catastrophic. It just got filled in with cement, basically. And let's take a look at ICR. And here you're going to see a lot of different websites and stuff.
Do fossils really show that creatures gradually evolved from simple to complex? The late fossil expert and evolution defender Stephen Gould recognized they didn't. He said the fossil record shows two clear features. One, sudden appearance, and two, stasis. When a new creature is discovered in the fossil record, it shows up suddenly and fully formed, with no gradual forms that led up to it. That's sudden appearance. Then its basic form stays the same. It doesn't evolve, and that's stasis. All kinds of fossilized creatures show sudden appearance and stasis, including creatures like crinoids, mosasaurs, beardworms, horseshoe crabs, lobsters, and trilobites. Rather than gradual evolution, the fossil record shows each animal form suddenly appears. Trilobites have perfectly formed body parts right from the start. They show up suddenly with no ancestors and have some of the most complex eyes that ever existed on Earth. Does that sound like slow, gradual evolution? They first occur in Cambrian rocks, which often represent the first deposits from Noah's flood. But even when found high above Cambrian rocks, trilobites still look like trilobites, as though they were created to reproduce more of their own kind. In The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin hoped future fossil finds would show examples of in-between creatures demonstrating evolution. So far, it's just more stasis. Creatures appear suddenly, fully formed, and they keep the same form. And that's what we'd expect to find. God's fully formed creation we read about in the book of Genesis.
Yeah, everything produces after their kind, and that's what we find in the fossil record. And I think we will fill these in. I'll give you the answers as we go through. Fossils only form when they are buried rapidly. That dead deer on the side of the road isn't turning into a fossil. It's going to get scavenged and decompose, and so it has to be buried rapidly. Therefore, any layer of sedimentary rock, this is number 2, worldwide layers of sedimentary rock, any layer that has fossils in it was laid down rapidly, not over millions of billions of years. This is Dr. Carl Werner. Great guy, great guy. He did a lot of research, and I'll make a long story short. He was trying to prove evolution was true. And in science, you don't really prove something true, you try to falsify it. And so his theory was if evolution is false, the modern animals will look just like their fossil ancestors, because evolution didn't occur. And you look at these two skulls, do you think they're the same species? And that's how they categorize them, genus and species. Like a species would be a horse, and the genus would be a horse and the donkey. And then the family is more like the horse, zebra, and donkey. So these look like a different genus, they look like a different species, but guess what? They're the same. Canis familiaris, what would that be? Dog. Yeah, dogs. And yeah, so you got the long nose of an Irish wolfhound, and you got the pushed-in nose of a bulldog, and yet they're the same species. So you can have that much variety within a species. And so he thought, and so he went to the museum and he saw this fossil shrimp, and he said, you know what, that looks just like a modern shrimp. And he was right. But look at those red letters there, boxes, that red box. That's the genus and species. That's what scientists call them. They look identical, but they think they're different genus, different species. And the same thing here, different genus, different species. And he's got a whole book of them called Living Fossils. The only thing that's different between them is what the scientists think they're called. The scientists think they're different. And he thought maybe one, they had a bad day, but he's got time and time again. They look identical, different genus, different species. They're blinded by their evolutionary thinking, something that today couldn't have lived millions or billions of years ago. So they just keep on, different genus, different species. Again, they keep looking identical, different genus, different species. So it's kind of a sleight of hand saying that, well, yeah, this evolved from that, but actually they look the same. If you were to read this in a book, you're saying, oh yeah, something different evolved into something, what we have today, but they're the same. And again, the book just goes over and over again. And again, worldwide layers of sedimentary rock point strongly to a worldwide flood. Okay, now, this is a test. Can you tell what's man-made and what's God's made? I was going to say what's designed and what's not designed, what's engineered and what's not, but a tree is an incredible design. I mean, you look at an acorn, there's got to be an excavation system in there to dig the hole, there's got to be a plumbing system in there to get the water up to the leaves, and the leaves have to have a chemical manufacturing there to break that molecule apart into oxygen, and a lumber company to make the wood. It's just an amazing what's designed into an acorn or a pine cone. So, I mean, you guys probably don't know where this is. This is the Boundary Waters, where there's no roads, no electricity, no motorboats. Everywhere you go, you paddle, and everything you need, you bring. So we didn't go up there and just hope there was some tents that evolved over millions of years, right? No, it's not going to happen. And there's my son. It's a great day to be when it's not raining, and that's how we got it all up there. We had 4 people in that cab. But then you have to paddle where you're going. You have to bring what you got, because it's not going to evolve there for you. So needless to say, we didn't portage. We didn't carry for our stuff from one lake to another. No, and we lived like kings. You know, we had popcorn and all that stuff. And so there's stuff that's natural and there's stuff that's man-made, something that God made and something that we didn't. And there's a design to it. And now we'll just have you close your eyes. I wonder if you ever thought, just close your eyes. Okay, now open them. All right, that's my son. Okay, we had a lot of fun. But you ever thought about sight? Darwin said if there's something out there that didn't evolve step by step by step, his theory would be false. So by his own hand, he falsified his theory. And because how is an eye going to evolve step by step? And there's so much, we don't have a little screen in the back of our eye that shows us what we're looking at. No, we got a bunch of sensors back there, millions of them really. And we don't see images, we just sense it, and then it puts together so our brain can see it. And look at your eye. Just incredible design for us to see. And we've got, have over 250 million photoreceptors, about 120 million rods and 6 million cones in each eye. How would you like to wire that? Wow, and then when it comes together, they meet. Just incredible sophistication and design. And it says, the evolutionists see that there's eyes everywhere, sight everywhere, so they say, well, it must have evolved independently at least 30 times. Oh, it just happened. 30 times. That's a lot of faith. And there was this one woman, she didn't have half her brain, and yet the brain went to the other side of her. The nerves went to the side of the brain that worked. Just an incredible design. They were astonished to see just how well a single hemisphere of the brain in this girl has adopted to compensate for the missing half. And there's a book back there where a guy had a stroke and they had to teach him how to do everything, his sons did. And he grew up to have a normal life. Or he was an adult, had a stroke, and they had to start from ground zero, teach him to crawl, teach him to walk. And they did an autopsy on his brain. His son did. He wanted to see how much of the brain was actually useful, working, and it was 3%. So he lived on a normal life on 3% of his brain. So our brain is incredibly sophisticated. And the nerves showed that the right hemisphere of the brain diverted to the left. And it's just amazing what's going on there. So Bob Enyart sent this to P.Z. Meyer. He's an evolutionist, or an anti-creationist, we'll put it that way. And he said this trochlea challenge. Do you see on the upper right, you see that loop? The muscle goes through that loop. And he asked him, well, how did that evolve? Just that simple thing, not the eye itself. How would you evolve a muscle to go through a loop like that? And PZ can't answer that. And we got our belly button. It's amazing. A birth of a baby is such a miracle because the baby's living in fluid. It's not, lungs aren't working. It's all pretty much hooked up to the umbilical cord. That's where it's getting its oxygen, all that stuff. And then it has to live in air. So his lungs have to work. And so what happens, and this is one of our talk, Dr. Joseph Cazzelli, he spoke at our Creation Club, and if you want to see this, go into tccsa.tc and then search, what's he call it, baby. You've come a long way, baby. That's the name of it. And all these valves have to close at the right time, at the right place, and it's just an incredible design. There's 4, maybe even 5 of these valves that have to close, or that baby's not going to live. It's not going to make the adaptation from the fluid to the air, and it's just a miracle. Just a miracle. And when he was born, he was premature, so they had him in a shoebox. You could hold him in with your hand, had him in a shoebox. And then he grew up and he went to med school, and one of his instructors was the guy who delivered him. It's really neat, but that's TCCSA. And how about blood clotting? Why doesn't the blood clot right now? If it did, we'd die. But what if our blood never clotted? Then we'd bleed to death. And I'll let David Reeves explain this one.
Blood clotting requires what's called a cascade. This means that each step is vital for the next step. You can't skip a step in the cascade, as each one is dependent on the previous step. Now, the blood clotting cascade requires over 100 steps. Each step must be in place the first time an animal is cut, or it will slowly bleed to death. How did over 100 steps just happen to all be in place at the right time? Having half the steps is no good. Having 99 steps is no good.
Yeah, 99 steps is no good. And blood clotting requires over 100 steps. That's the one of the fill in the blanks. Above that, each eye has 125 million rods and 6 million cones. And blood clotting, and then the baby, there's 4 valves that have to close. And so it's just amazing, the design. How could that evolve? How could we evolve without that cascading effect? And again, Dave Reeves, he's got a good YouTube channel. These are under the Heavens Declare. And then again, what came first, the hearts or blood cells? That's number 4, the heart or blood cells. And I asked this in St. Louis. at a museum, the Mastodon Museum, and the person said, because they have all their evolutionary stuff, and I said, well, what evolved first, the heart or blood cells? And they said blood cells. And I said, well, what good is our blood cells without a heart? You know, it's not going to work. And even if you had the heart and the blood cells and all those millions of years getting together at the same time in the same place, what good are they without a respiratory system, or a nervous system, or a digestive system, or a skeletal system, or a muscular system? Everything had to be fully functional. You know, everything right in place from the get-go. And then it's like, this is called irreducible complexity. A mousetrap's made out of 5 things. If you take one of those things away, it's not going to work. And so how is something that's not going to work going to evolve 5 things? And our body is way, way, way more intelligent than that. And then it's the chicken and the egg thing. You know, these parts of the cell are interdependent and needed to be created all at once. This is what I'll play at St. Cloud State too. There is no evidence for God. And so people are walking back and forth, and I'll have my Bluetooth speaker and they'll be listening to this.
Lots of people say there's no evidence for God. Well, we're going to knock that one out in 3. I'm just going to have to keep it simple, throw in the old 1-2 combo, get in and out real quick, and let you fine folks chat all about it, okay? Punch 1 I'm going to call the info uppercut. When's the last time you walked into a library and asked, hey, where are all the books that have been written by mindless products of natural laws? The librarian would probably laugh at you and tell you that no such books exist. And they don't exist because they can't exist. Why not? Because first of all, it's just common sense. The words that form the message in books always originate from a person with a brain. Or to say it a bit more scientifically, the message of the book, the purpose, comes to be understood by the orderly placement of the words, design, and information. Ah, information. Now, anytime we find info, these basic laws always apply. Number 1, matter doesn't spontaneously produce information. Number 2, only a mental source, intelligence, can generate new creative information. In other words, just like those books that couldn't originate without a mind, neither could life. Why not, you ask? Because we know that DNA contains information. Therefore, the laws of information science apply, which means the information in DNA couldn't have spontaneously generated, and that a mind is behind the information. Period. No exceptions. Look at it this way. The simplest life form we know of is an amoeba, and it contains as much information in its DNA as 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. So, are we to believe that there's no way a message in a library book could spontaneously generate, but far more complicated messages in DNA that contain 1,000 times more information could have? Not likely. You see, when it comes to life or anything else that contains information, the laws of information science confirm the necessity of a creative mind. And guess what? In the very first book of the Bible, it just happens to mention that. In the beginning, God created. Bam! Uppercut lands on the chin. And now here comes the indefensible head blow. We'll call this the not a big bang bing swing, the KO to the claim that there's no evidence of God, the law of causality, left hook of doom. It goes like this. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. Now, either something caused the universe to come into existence, or nothing caused it. I might not be the smartest guy behind the telescope, but honest, practical, everyday thinking's going to lead me to the latter. You have to work pretty hard to conjure up a way that nothing did it. You see, it's pretty improbable, nigh impossible, to account for design, information, and cause if the universe just exploded from nothing. Smack! And while we're on the topic, where did the matter come from that exploded? Are we really to believe that there was nothing and then it exploded, and now the exploded nothing is something, and we just happen to be smart enough to discover and understand the very laws that prove the opposite? And if the general understanding of the law of cause and effect is true, how can matter come from a lesser cause like nothing? I mean, come on. I don't have a bunch of letters after my name, but even a monkey knows better. And yeah, I snuck in a couple of extra jabs in there, so sue me. Now for some parting words from our sponsor, the Bible. It tells us in Romans 1:20 that since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. It also says that people actually know the truth, but they reject it, which explains why even though there's overwhelming evidence that there is a God, evidence won't convince the unwilling. Sad but true. So there you have it. With just a couple of meaningful blows, the claim that there is no evidence for God is down for the count, mi amigos. In other words, it's been debunked. Adios. This video is fully funded by a generous donation. To keep debunked videos free, please consider a tax-deductible donation or reach out to us to sponsor a video.
Adios. That's Carl Kirby. He's got a getdebunked.org. You can see he's got 20 some of them. He does really a good job. And so number 5 here is evidence for God. Life requires information, and which requires intelligence. There is an intelligence behind how we are put together, and a lot of that is written out in our DNA. It's the molecule of life, and it's just amazing on how that gets put together. Each of the 100 trillion cells has 3 billion DNA letters. About 1 million DNA letters are damaged in a cell on a good day. So there's a DNA repair system. So what evolved first, the repair system or the DNA molecule? But here's just a quick look at what's happening inside our DNA.
What you are about to see is DNA's most extraordinary secret: how a simple code is turned into flesh and blood. It begins with a bundle of factors assembling at the start of a gene. A gene is simply a length of DNA instructions stretching away to the left. The assembled factors trigger the first phase of the process, reading off the information that will be needed to make the protein. Everything is ready to roll. 3, 2, 1, go. The blue molecule racing along the DNA is reading the gene. It's unzipping the double helix and copying one of the 2 strands. The yellow chain snaking out of the top is a copy of the genetic message, and it's made of a close chemical cousin of DNA called RNA. The building blocks to make the RNA enter through an intake hole. They are matched to the DNA, letter by letter, to copy the A's, C's, T's, and G's of the gene. The only difference is that in the RNA copy, the letter T is replaced with a closely related building block known as U. You are watching this process called transcription in real time. It's happening right now in almost every cell in your body.
Almost every cell of your body, that's happening. And they get so excited, oh, we found it, in Miller-Urey, and they made amino acids, which is a building block of life. Well, there's a whole lot more to life than just building blocks. It's like if I found a lug nut, and I said, hey, I found a building block of a space shuttle. And there's a whole lot more that's different there. And then the mutation rate, if evolution were true, there'd be, after 50,000 years, we'd have all these mutations. And after 6,000 years, we'd have a fraction of that. And guess what's actual? A fraction of that. So we have good information getting mutated every generation. We got more mutations. Good information going bad. Where did the good information come from? I would say God did it. God designed it, and now the fall, it's falling apart. And then there's this other thing called chirality, and the proteins. There's the way the proteins form. There's right-handed and left-handed. Like these are not identical, and in life, all the proteins are left-handed. They're all left-handed, and once you die, then it goes down to a 50-50 mix. And how does that happen? And this was the thing, and this is a really sharp guy, PhD scientist, he's got a bunch of patents. How can random chance natural process create proteins with thousands of left-handed molecules, and then also create DNA with billions of right-handed ones? Because if you get the opposite one in there, it's not going to work. And it said, and they call that chirality. The reality of chirality, more than any other evidence, did more to convince me of the reality of an all-powerful creator. So there's such sophistication in our life, or in how we're put together, that if people are intellectually honest, they'll say, man, this didn't come together by chance. That's what Francis Crick, he co-discovered the DNA molecule with Watson, and he saw how it couldn't evolve here. So what did he do? Did he believe in God? No, he said he became an alienist. He said, life came from outer space. And so that's the lengths that they'll go to so they don't have to believe in God. And now this is from ICR's YouTube page, and it's under That's a Fact. In the Fibonacci sequence, God's fingerprints are everywhere.
In the Fibonacci sequence, the first 2 numbers are 0 and 1, and each following number is the sum of the previous 2 numbers. As the sequence climbs, the ratio of 2 of its higher values nears the golden ratio, or phi. These special numbers often occur in nature, like in the spirals on a sunflower. The same patterns show up in the circular layers of a pine cone or pineapple, and in clusters of conifer needles. So, what does all this mean? Well, evolution can't explain the development of mathematical laws, but the Bible can. Scripture solves this mystery by pointing us to the truth of the intelligent Creator. God created all things, both visible and invisible, like math.
Like math, invisible and visible. This is really fascinating right here.
Finger bone lengths follow the proportions of the Fibonacci number sequence. The sum of the smallest two segments of a finger equals the length of the third, and the sum of the second and third equals the length of the fourth bone. Your hand is a mobile golden spiral, perfectly balancing strength and dexterity.
It's perfect. That spiral, where else do we see that spiral? We see it, this is 15 uncanny examples of the golden ratio in nature. It's in the sunflower seed, it's in our DNA, that rotation. And it's also in shells and horns and spider webs. It's in a hurricane. It's in a galaxy. It's like God's fingerprints are everywhere. And again, the pine cone and the number of petals on a flower. The lily, which has 3 petals, buttercups, which have 5, chicories have 21, daisies 34. So it's interesting how even nature follows that. And phi appears in petals, but look at what it says. On account of the ideal packing arrangement is selected by Darwinian processes, each petal is placed at such and such per turn. So they're still given Darwin. Darwin doesn't select anything. It doesn't make sense at all. But we'll catch you up with your blanks here. 5 is life requires information. Information requires intelligence. 6 is evidence for God. What caused the universe? And how did life begin? For number 6. Number 7, you can make $10 million by showing how the DNA organizes itself naturally. And the Fibonacci sequence, this curve can be found in DNA, shells, horns, hurricanes, and galaxies. So as small as you look and as big as you look, there's God's fingerprints, I believe. And fractals. Oh, you're going to love fractals. This is Jason Lyle. Brilliant guy.
Can evolution explain math? The Mandelbrot set of numbers reveals a secret code that went undiscovered for thousands of years. While mathematicians can plot this set by hand, today's computers show with great precision that beauty is built into numbers. And when you take a closer look at the Mandelbrot set, you see the pattern goes on without end. This is an example of a fractal, a type of structure that repeats infinitely on smaller and smaller scales. Snowflakes have a fractal quality. Why is this? The laws of nature responsible for snowflake formation are mathematical because they stem from the mind of God. Fractals occur both in math, which is abstract, not made of atoms, and the physical world, which is made of atoms, because they have the same designer. Lightning branches occur in a fractal pattern, and so does broccoli. If the universe was formed by chance, why would nature follow mathematical rules?
Exactly, and Jason Lyle does a really good job with this. And the one on the left is a mathematical formula, the one on the right is the one found in nature. And again, that was a fern, this is a galaxy, the one on the left is a mathematical formula, the one on the right is found in nature. Same thing with broccoli. And so fractals, number 11, similar images can be found in nature and by graphing mathematical formulas. Okay, now what do you think has a tail like a beaver, bill like a duck, fur like an otter, spurs like a rooster, webbed toes like water birds, poison glands like reptiles, hollow spur like a viper tooth, lays eggs like a bird, echolocation like dolphins, sonar like whales, short legs like reptiles, makes the nest like a bird, leathery eggs like turtles, babies have front teeth like mammals, leathery bill and all that stuff. What do you think that is? Platypus, that's right. Well, what's that common ancestor? You know, where did that come from? I mean, if it came from everything, when they sent that to England, they thought it was a joke. They thought they just tied, you know, it's just a hoax. But there they are, they really live. And okay, so that's the platypus, number 12. Okay, and then this is debunked evolution. And it's shocking how they put some jumps they can go from the evidence to their theory.
How do you go from hundreds of bone fragments to 47 skeleton bones to a missing link that supposedly lived 3 million years ago named Lucy? In school textbooks across the country, Lucy is represented as a clear ape to human transition, walking upright, holding babies, and gazing intelligently as she walks. This teaching sows seeds of doubts in the minds of Christian students, leading them to believe that the biblical creation account is based on far-fetched fantasies. But is this really true? Is Lucy really our early human ancestor? Well, let's take a look at the evidence from head to toe. Made of hundreds of bone fragments glued together to make 47 parts, even accidentally including a vertebrae from a different species, do we really know what she was? Her skull, inner ears, locking wrist, curved fingers, and short legs reveal that she was definitely an ape. But that's not what evolutionists want you to think. Shown with human expressions, eye whites, which no apes have, and walking upright, they want you to think she was on her way to becoming human. The truth is, we were created in the image of God, and not in the image of apes, out of the dust of the earth, and given the dominion charge to rule over all of God's creation. That's why we put apes in the zoo, and not the other way around. We sing, worship, have ceremonies, pray, educate ourselves, and do so many other things that reflect the fact that we are spiritual beings and not animals. See more on this topic and others at debunkevolution.com.
Yeah, we got some wristbands out there with Debunk Evolution. Yeah, and by the way, Lucy is the one we looked at last hour where they cut her hip to make it a chimp hip to a human hip. So, and that's one of their big things. It's still in the textbooks about Lucy, and it is a fraud. Okay, pop quiz. What's the most complicated thing up there? The flash drive, the dime, the sunflower, the cottonwood seed, or the acorn? What do you think? Who thinks it's the dime? Couldn't that evolve? Who thinks it's the flash drive? Cottonwood seed? Acorn. Okay, looks like the acorn has it. Okay. Yeah, but that dime, if you found that on the street, do you think it evolved or do you think somebody lost it? It has information on it, a clear sign of design. And the flash drive, well, we can make the flash drive. But what we can't make is the cottonwood seed or the acorn. And this is what those two turn into. On the left, it's the oak tree. On the right, that's the cottonwood. So that big tree was just floating through the air at one time. It's just amazing what's designed into that. In the oak tree, that'll produce, I think, 15,000 acorns a year. Can you imagine how many? It must be in the millions of that cottonwood seeds. And it's just incredible. And now here's some giraffes. Somebody put some words to it. It says, look at her, she's all neck and legs. All right? Well, look at her, she's all neck and legs.
She's all neck and legs, look at her.
Oh, I am looking at her.
Stop looking at her.
You just told me to look at her.
Ow!
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 Ow! That's right, me throat, that.
And that's giraffes. They call that necking. Okay. And in the dinosaur talk, you always see those long-necked dinosaurs with their necks crossed, so maybe the long-necked dinosaurs did that too. But a giraffe is an amazing design, because a bull giraffe will have a 2.5-foot heart, because he's got to get that blood all the way up there, 15 feet, possibly close to 20. It's got to overcome gravity, so it's got to be very powerful to get it up there. But then when they bend down to take a drink, what's going to happen? All that force plus gravity, it's going to blow the brains out. So what did God design into that? The arteries have extra elasticity to ensure that they can handle the high pressure close to the heart. Plus, they've got little stints. Oh, by the way, they chew their cud too, so they got to swallow it and then get it all the way up and then swallow it. But they've got little shunts in the arteries so that it'll slow down the blood so it doesn't blow their brains out. And this is one of my favorite ones, the bee, and what it has to do to get the pollen, and then listen to what he gives credit to at the end.
This lovely pink flower is Orpheum frutescens, which flourishes here in these salty conditions near the sea. But what's truly amazing about this plant is that it struck up this exclusive relationship with a particular bee.
Orpheum flowers don't contain nectar. The payment they provide is pollen. But strangely, they keep it locked up. Special twisted stamens stop it being stolen by visiting insects. All, that is, except one. The female carpenter bee. Only she has the key.
Let me show you what the bee has to do using these tuning forks here.
When the bee lands on the flower, it changes the rate at which it beats its wings to just the right frequency. From this note to this one. Middle C. And it's these vibrations that are the key, unlocking the stamens, which open up at the top here and just shower the bee with pollen. Ah, look at that. Look at the amount of yellow pollen on there. Fantastic. Now watch the bee do the same, hitting the middle C note with the beat of its wings and unlocking the pollen. No other insect does this. It's incredible, isn't it? One single species of flower, one particular type of bee have evolved together to give this intimate partnership.
They evolved together. Isn't that something? They always got to point to evolution. Now, there's no way that had to be designed. And middle C, isn't that just amazing? Middle C, it has to vibrate at that. So number 14 is giraffe. Number 15, caterpillar vibrates at the middle C frequency to get its pollen. And then they got bees. And you ever wonder how they know where to go? How they know where the flowers is? And they took some African bees and brought them to the European or vice versa, and they didn't think they'd be able to communicate because they'd been separated for so long. It was like hand in glove. They could communicate.
When a scout bee dances straight up on the honeycomb, she is telling the other bees they can find food by flying directly toward the sun. If food can be found by flying away from the sun, she dances straight down. By varying the angle of the dance, a scout can indicate a food source in any direction. 90 degrees to the right of the sun. 40 degrees to the left of the sun. But how is a bee able to follow bearings with respect to the sun? This would imply the bee has some kind of compass, and so she has. An amazing polarized light compass built into her compound eye. To demonstrate that the bee language really works, we set out 3 feeders. The first near a stream. The second near a grove of trees. The third along a fence. The scout discovering feeder number 1 is marked with a dot. The scout discovering feeder number 2 is marked with a bar, and the scout discovering feeder number 3 with a cross. In a matter of minutes, the scout bees are back at the hive, busily sharing their discovery with the other bees. Now let's see how well the messages are received. The bees crowd around, sensing with their antennae the movements of the scout. These bees are marked with the same symbol as the scout bee they are attending, but with a different color. In a short while, the marked bees begin to arrive at the feeders, but only bees with dots visit feeder number 1. Only those with bars visit feeder number 2. And only crosses visit feeder number 3. In each instance, the bees visit only the feeders they have been told about. So we say the dance of the bee is a briefing session, communicating to other bees specific and precise information as to the kind of food, its sugar content, and the direction and distance which must be flown to reach it.
Yeah. And so the number 3, 16 bees communicate by dancing, and they can communicate. All right. And then the monarchs. These are, I think, evolutionists' worst nightmare. You guys get monarchs here, right? Yeah, you get monarchs, and monarchs, they go from eggs to caterpillars. Caterpillars don't have any reproductive organs, and they're just eating machines. And then they go into the chrysalis, they hang there, and then everything inside gets liquefied and then put back together, and so it can fly away and breed. And so how do you go from Yeah, how do you get, I mean, if it had to be all the way through the chrysalis or it's dead. It had to make all those changes all at once. That's beyond the realm of possibility in my book. You have to have way too much faith to believe that a caterpillar just happened to be able to dissolve itself and get all the way through the chrysalis the very first time. Because 50% through doesn't work, you're dead. 90% through doesn't work, you're dead. Even 99% of the way through, you're still dead. You had to get all the way through, and it's just amazing. Yeah, but what happens? So, okay, now they're down probably, let's see, what is this, March, April? They might be working their way up now, but they spend 9 months down in Mexico, and then they follow the milkweed up. So they can lay their plants, lay their eggs on the plants. Milkweed's poisonous, but they can handle it. And the second generation they lay their eggs and they die, eventually. And then the fourth generation gets all the way up here, and instead of freezing over the winter and going extinct, they all fly back down to Mexico, and they'd never been there. How in the world does that happen? By chance random processes, year after year after year. No, there's a design to them. And then that last one, they live 9 months. They're the Methuselah generation. Because if they went down there and died like the rest of them, then there'd be no way to reproduce. No, that'd be the end of it. So just amazing. And then we got these, let's see, migrate to Mexico. Number 18 is migrate to Mexico. And this is a golden plover. And they live up by Alaska. Does anybody know where they might fly to? If I was them, I'd fly to Mexico, But they don't. Yeah, it goes to to Hawaii. They're up there in Alaska, and they take off. That's where I'd go. I'd go down to Mexico to survive the winter, but they don't. They go to Hawaii. How do they know Hawaii is there? The parents, they hatch the kids, and they take off. The parents take off before the kids. The kids keep getting fatter, and then they take off. How do they know Hawaii is there? And if they fly by themselves, they wouldn't make it. They have to fly in formation. And then the hummingbird is just an engineering marvel. Those wings rotate all over the place. Their heart, it's 13 licks per second. Wings can swivel in all directions, 50 to 80 beats per second. And where did that come from? Oh, is that a dinosaur too? I don't think so. And they say how dinosaurs evolved into birds. Dinosaurs, they're going to have a bad leg and a bad wing before they can fly. It doesn't make any sense. And the ruby-throated hummingbird on the east side of North America crosses the Gulf of Mexico. How do they know where to go? Never been there. And now these, if you think you ate a lot at lunch, hopefully you're not like these guys.
Antarctica, the coldest place on Earth, and home to the largest living penguins. Emperors spend most of their lives at sea, but because they're birds and lay eggs, they must come back to land to breed. Millions of years ago, penguin flippers were wings, like those of other birds. But now their body is better designed for moving underwater than in the air. Yet to breed, they must travel long distances over the frozen sea, sometimes walking and tobogganing 60 kilometers to reach their sheltered breeding colonies. Courtship and mating occurs at the start of winter. Soon, the sun will set for the last time until spring, and the colony will be in complete darkness for 4 months. As soon as her single egg is laid, the female passes it over to her mate to incubate. The egg rests on the male's feet and is kept warm under the brood pouch, a special flap of skin near his belly. The female's task is over for now, and she returns to sea to feed.
And this is the coldest part of the winter, is when they hatch their eggs. It's dark, it's just amazing. And they have to do it in a group, otherwise they're going to freeze to death.
It's continuously dark and temperatures drop to minus 70 degrees centigrade. Penguins stay when all other creatures have fled, because each guards a treasure. A single egg resting on the top of its feet and kept warm beneath the downy bulge of its stomach. There is no food and no water for them, and they will not see the sun again for 4 months. Surely no greater ordeal is faced by any animal. As the sun departs from the Antarctic, it lightens the skies in the far north.
And so basically they come, the female ones lay the eggs, then the males put them on their feet. They have a pouch by their feet, and they go around and they don't eat for, I think, 9 weeks. That's number 20. Male emperor penguins do not eat for 9 weeks and lose 45% of their body fat to hatch the egg. And it's just amazing. And the female, she's out in the ocean swimming around, getting fat, and then they come back and then they start feeding this one.
By the time the chicks are 3 months old, they've left their parents' warmth. Their own down jackets are now thick enough to keep them warm, and both parents can now spend most of their time fishing at sea. It won't be long before the chicks join their parents underwater, where the emperor penguin is truly at home.
I think he was designed for the water, not for the air. I don't think he had flying wings millions of years ago, like they said. And so again, they had to do that all as a group, otherwise they're going to freeze. And they do it in the coldest part of the winter. It's just an amazing design. Then they do it year after year after year. Okay, now we're going to jump to salmon. Salmon are freshwater, then they go in the ocean where they're saltwater, and then they come back into the streams where they're freshwater again. And this one was rather interesting.
On the morning of December 2nd, 1964, a 2-year-old male coho salmon was found swimming among hundreds of juvenile fish in one of the hatchery's 5 concrete rearing ponds. Closer examination revealed that the back fin of this unexpected visitor had been clipped with the distinctive identification mark of the Prairie Creek facility, a mark carried only by fish raised in this pond and released to the sea the year before.
Yeah, and so what they do is when they go back to where they were hatched, and they can smell the different tributaries, and they get right to the water that they were hatched in, and they let them go in that ditch on this side, but that's not where the salmon went. It was amazing where he did go.
The previous year, it had been released behind the hatchery in Lost Man Creek. Yet instead of retracing its path back to where its journey began, it chose to resume its northbound course. The reason for this unusual action could be found near the highway, 100 yards to the east. Well water, draining directly from the hatchery.
Directly from the hatchery, it's going through that tube out, and so that's what he smells.
Yet the difficulties to be encountered had only begun. After crossing under the highway, the fish would enter this storm sewer. Its final glimpse of daylight would illuminate a jump into this 12-inch pipe. Then, in the darkness, the salmon would swim under the hatchery parking lot directly toward its final destination, only to meet a hopeless dead end. Under these walkway boards, less than 10 feet from the rearing pond, the fish would find itself trapped in a concrete flume. Yet spurred on by the overpowering scent of well water that poured in around it, the exhausted traveler refused to give up. Searching for an escape, it would locate the opening of a 4-inch drain pipe. Then, squeezing its body inside, would ram its way through, until again being stopped this time by a 90-degree upward bend in the pipe. Drawing upon its final reserves of power and will, the fish would make the turn to be faced once more with an overwhelming obstacle. The remaining 3.5 feet of standpipe was covered with a framed screen weighing 8 pounds, nearly 5 times more than the fish itself. As the battered fish swam among the juvenile salmon on that memorable December morning, doubts and questions about its journey filled the air like heavy mist. Finally, the decision was made to lift the boards covering the drainage flume. And moments later, speculation gave way to awe and wonder. 72 coho salmon, all bearing the fin clip of the Prairie Creek hatchery, were trapped within the flume. Each had battled alongside its indomitable companion to make all but the final leap back to the pond where life began.
It's incredible how it could sense the stream from the overflow and from where they were left loose. And that wasn't just too much difference, but number 21 salmon smell the water to return to the place where they hatched. Incredible sensors in there, and they go up there. It's really quite remarkable. And what are the chances that 70 some of them would do that over millions of years? It's an incredible design. And does anybody know what this is? Anybody see it? An octopus. Now, how in the world does this evolve? You know, it can just blend in with almost everything. It changes color. They're going to do this in reverse order. It just happened. You know, there's things that are just designed incredible. In slow motion into the thing, and boom, it's gone. That just happened? I don't know. I don't have enough faith to believe that one. And this one will actually imitate.
It looked like an octopus, but it could morph its shape in an instant to appear as seemingly any animal around it. At first, no one had any idea what it was.
The first time I saw it, I just was blown away. You couldn't get a more spectacular animal. It really is the pinnacle of wizardry.
Biologist Mark Norman was the first scientist to study this seemingly shapeless creature. He named it the mimic octopus.
The mimic octopus makes itself look like a living, moving animal. So it pulls all its arms around behind its body and swims along like a poisonous flatfish called a banded sole. In other cases, if it's getting attacked, it puts 6 arms down a hole and raises the other 2 arms to look like a poisonous sea snake that has bands along its body. If that's not enough, it'll swim along looking like a poisonous lionfish with these banded arms looking like the banded spines that come off these very deadly fish.
So far, 15 separate species are known to be in the mimic octopus act, and Norman is not always sure exactly what the mimic is doing. He observed this mimic scuttling along the sea bottom, looking something like a furry turkey with human legs.
Sometimes it's hard when you watch a mimic octopus doing what it does to interpret what's going on. It's a bit like looking at ink spots in a psychiatrist's office going, I don't know what that is. It could be a piano, it could be a fridge. So you get 3 or 4 divers together and you'll argue all night trying to work out what we think it was mimicking.
Where did nature's greatest actor come from?
Where exactly? It's an incredible design. Nobody here but us seaweed that runs along. And then so mimic octopus, that's 22, changes shape to look like poisonous snakes and fish.
We've created a plexiglass wonderland just so you can observe how amazing this creature really is. The octopus. Imagine that you're an octopus, like this cyanea here. Your body has no bones, none. And what that means is that you'd be able to go almost anywhere you want to. Even if you happen to be a very large octopus, a 600-pounder say, you'd be able to squeeze yourself down so far, you could pass through a passageway no larger than a quarter.
Isn't that amazing? Just amazing. Okay, now what do you think has transparent eyelids to see clearly underwater? What do you think? What? Maybe that could, nope, this one's a mammal. He's got real sharp teeth. We got a beaver. Yeah, he's got, has transparent eyelids to see clearly underwater, special valves in its ears and its nose to keep the water out. Eyelids are transparent so they can close eyes underwater and still see extremely well. Self-sharpening front incisors, so they got a hard end and a softer end so it wears away and so it keeps it sharp, and that's how they design blades for like printing places. They design it so one's hard and one's softer so it'll be self-sharpening. And they can chew on sticks underwater, so they have a pouch that seals it, and they got oil, and they can go half a mile underneath the water. Just an amazing, amazing design. And then I don't know if you've seen this. This is an echidna, and again, they'll say millions of years. This is from Australia.
Studies suggest that special cells in her beak are sensitive to the electromagnetic signals emitted by all living things. It's a sense usually found in sharks and rays.
Yeah, so sharks, that's number 24. They have sensors to detect electromagnetic signals similar to sharks and whales. Okay, and so what does it say, millions of years?
Ah, the beautiful, brilliant result of 15 million years of evolution.
15 million years, so they always have to point back to evolution. And the woolly bear caterpillar, it can freeze and thaw up to 14 times. Like 14 years, it can freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw and freeze and thaw. And then it'll, let's see, and then it finally turns into the moth. Let's see, an Isabella tiger moth it finally turns into. All right, so now we're in the home stretch here. Animals like fireflies have bioluminescence, which supposedly evolved, let's see, 40 to 50 times. Like fireflies, 40 to 50 times, I don't believe that. And it's 20 times higher than the incandescent light bulb, more efficient. Okay, anybody know what this is?
This 6-foot-long animal produces what almost no other animal can conjure: a killing shock of electricity. Known as the electric eel, it's a unique creature, more closely related to a catfish than an eel.
So how did that evolve? Where did that come from?
First, it produces a small electric field, sensing distortions in it to navigate and to find other animals. These fish have no idea that their heartbeats and muscle action are drawing a killer closer.
And then it zaps the fish. For the sake of time, we're going to skip ahead and go to the dolphins. The dolphins and have sonar, all right? Bats and dolphins have similar DNA for echolocation. That's number 28, bats and dolphins. And some bats, they do it with their throat, their voice. They do a high-pitched one. Most microbats echolocate by producing high-frequency sounds. And it's just amazing that they can tell where their own child is. They can keep all those sounds separate. I mean, all those bats flying around, it's pretty amazing. But then there's a megabat that uses his tongue to emit clicks, so he can echolocate. And also there's moths have sonar jamming defense to fend off the bats. So furious clicking by the moths reverse the bat's pattern. And so how did that evolve? And then we're going to take a look at the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. Daniel Kish I'll just let it explain. It's self-explanatory. But I've been given creation talks for over 10 years. I saw this last year, and it's like, how did I never hear about this? It's just amazing what God has designed into us. And then after this, we'll have Pastor close.
By 13 months of age, Daniel Kish had lost both eyes to a cancer called retinoblastoma. Instinctively, he soon began to make clicking sounds and started to echolocate just like bats do. Those clicks you hear are from his mouth, not the tapping of his cane.
Big open area, but we're approaching a structure.
He calls this flash sonar. Flash sonar has become Kish's primary means of navigation.
So in my case, it wasn't something I was really aware of. It just happened as a consequence of my childhood experiences. I get an image that occurs in a 360-degree field.
But the roof structure we're under isn't totally solid somehow. It's got openings in it, as if it were slatted.
Just amazing. How could he do that? What else has God designed into us?
As a kid, I was raised to think of myself as pretty unremarkable. My parents, their emphasis, their regard for me was you're a kid like any other kid.
He got his first bicycle at the age of 6.
I learned to click like a maniac, and I learned to ride around the neighborhood. And if I ran into a pole, my parents just didn't make a big deal out of it. Running into a pole is a drag, but never being allowed to run into a pole is a disaster.
Riding a bike blind has become a kind of stunt he does to raise awareness that the brain can adapt, and that people can do far more than they realize.
"15 years ago, it was just unheard of.
So if you'd all close your eyes for just a moment, okay? And you're going to learn a bit of flash sonar.
Now, you have scientists studying it, you have instructors wanting to learn it, you have instructors wanting to teach it, you have blind people wanting to learn it. Being able to navigate comfortably in any environment, under any circumstances, nothing can be more fundamental to freedom than being able to do that.
Just amazing. Just amazing. Human echolocation. And he's got this organization called visioneers.org, I believe. It's a nonprofit, mainly over in Europe. I contacted him to see if he would want to be interviewed for Real Science Radio. And he did. He did. And then I contacted him. He said he would. And I said, you think we could interview your parents? You think they'd want to be on? Because I'd love to see their mindset about giving their blind child a bicycle. And he said that his mom's pretty camera shy and microphone shy. But it's just amazing. What else has God designed into us? And he was just a 2-year-old toddler, and he's figuring out how to do that. And there's a book in the back where a guy had a stroke, and he had to learn everything. He had a family, his kids were grown, and he had a stroke, and they said, oh, he's never going to recover. And the son said, we'll see about that. And they had to teach him everything right from the beginning. Taught him to crawl, taught him to sit, taught him to walk, all that stuff. And then he grew up, he eventually had a normal life. And when he died, his son, it was a doctor, said, I'd like to do an autopsy and see how much of his brain was working. And it was 3%. The brain is an amazing, amazing, amazing design by God. And so we see all this design all around us. And the main thing is to show us, that point to God, the Creator. You know, God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. And that's what motivates me. I don't want to see anybody go to heaven or go to hell. I don't want to see anybody go to hell because they reject the Creator God and won't put His faith in Jesus' Son to die for His sins and rise again. And I love this one too. Therefore, as by offense of one, judgment came unto all men to condemnation, but even so, by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all men to justification. So do you have that free gift? The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And with that, I'll hand it over to Pastor. And there is a free gift called eternal life, and if you don't know that you have it, you can know.